video because I did an entire 8 minutes and didn't realize that the microphone was off. Um, so I'm gonna try to retrace my steps and kind of give you guys my point of view. But essentially, the WBA stripped Manny Pacquiao today, and they stripped Manny Pacquiao because they have a specific type of ruling in which they can make a champion the champion in recess, quote unquote. And what that essentially means is that if a champion who owns the Super Championship, which is basically the main WBA title holder, that he or she can, if they cannot defend it for an extended period of time, there's no time stamp on it. It's just an extended period of time in loose, vague language based on their rules. And I looked at their rule book to try to see if there was a specific time, but they didn't. Um, so they, because of that, and because if Manny Pacquiao hasn't submitted any sort of paperwork to show that he's legally or physically unable to perform, they are allowed to put him in recess and elevate the regular or interim champion to full status so that they become the full champion. Now, we've seen this happen on a handful of occasions, especially recently because of the WBA championship. The Super Championship is maybe like coming up on close to 10 years being old. So it's not a old title. It's really, really young still. So they've only made this ruling on a handful of occasions in the past where they deemed a champion in recess and then they let somebody else get full access to the title so that they can defend it, and unify and become undisputed if need be. The last time this happened was with Floyd Mayweather when he defeated Miguel Cotto, and people tend to forget that he had to move up in weight, fought Cotto for the WBA title, and then he didn't drop the title right away. But the WBA, just to be on the safe side, they put Floyd in champion in recess because in the past, Floyd never really cared to fight for the WBA title. When he fought Shane Mosley, he didn't pay the 3% sanctioning fee because he would have owed the WBA about a little under $700,000 had he wanted the title. So the title wasn't on the line, and then of course that title ended up being stripped away from Shane Mosley, and it went to somebody else. But when it came to the situation, when you look at Floyd and Canelo, once Floyd and Canelo were getting ready to fight each other, the WBA reinstated Floyd as super champion, despite the fact that Canelo had been considered the champion. It was kind of a weird situation because they gave Austin Trout and Canelo they gave them the okay to unify the titles because when Canelo and Trout fought at 154, leading into the Mayweather fight, Trout had beaten Cotto for what was the regular title, but they didn't consider Trout to be the full champion at the time. And it wasn't until the Canelo fight came along that Trout was then given the full title, and then of course Canelo then won, making Canelo the unified champion in the division. So when Canelo and Floyd fought, you had two guys who had the same title, but then with them giving Floyd the full status back, it was kind of like they demoted Canelo on the night of the fight, and then when Floyd beat Canelo, he just basically, held on to the title that he had won from Cotto. This is often really, really confusing, and it's only done because of a monetary situation. But when you look at the welterweight division and what this means, it means that Ugas will be able to be the full champion. And because he's the full champion, that means that we're likely headed towards Ugas versus Spence for the WBA, WBC, and IBF welterweight titles, something that I look forward to. It's one less champion out of the way, and it's one step closer to undisputed. And for Ugas, it's the best fight that he could take because the last time he had a high-profile fight, he didn't finish as well as he started. And I think he really is pumped to kind of, prove that he is one of the elite welterweights in the division. And for Errol Spence, we already know Errol Spence is on paper and resume-wise the best welterweight in the division. And because he's the best welterweight in the division, he has the opportunity to now continue to unify titles given that he's already holding two belts in the division. And I know for Errol Spence, he wants to get that title out of the way, and he's been talking about cleaning up his side of the street. And this is one of the ways that he can clean up this side of the street is by beating Ugas in a big fight. It'll mean that both guys will be able to make a lot of money. Ugas is probably going to make a career high payday. And for Errol Spence is another way for him to continue to add to his numbers in order to justify himself to have even more of a bigger split in a potential Terence Crawford fight. Now, what does this mean for the rest of the welterweight division? Terence Crawford needs to do something very, very drastic because he is losing ground, and it is bad. And for somebody like Terence Crawford, who is getting paid $3.5 million to fight guys that really have no business fighting him in the ring at this point in their careers, it's starting to look really bad. And it's almost starting to look as if Terence Crawford is not showing that he is willing to go for broke and get a really big guy into the ring. You have Danny Garcia, you have Keith Thurman, you have Sean Porter. Those three guys, all you have to do is give them the type of money that they're looking for, and everything else is in your favor. You beat those three guys, and you have the leverage that you need in order to go into a fight with Errol Spence and say, hey, I deserve this amount. But until you do that, Errol Spence has a few of those guys that I just named under his resume. And if he beats Ugas, and let's say that he gets Keith Thurman, who comes back into the ring, there's nothing else for Terence Crawford to leverage himself on. That WBO title is not going to do much for him to leverage. His lack of pay-per-view ticket receipts, his lack of live gate revenue is going to hold against him if Errol Spence is allowed to continue to unify the division and fight big game. Terence Crawford has to realize that it doesn't matter if you're friends with Warren Buffett. Jerry Jones is spending money on Errol Spence. That's the difference. Warren Buffett is not taking out an arena to put Crawford into a fight. Warren Buffett is just cool with Terence Crawford because they're both from Nebraska. Jerry Jones is spending millions of dollars to secure Errol Spence fights. That is the difference here. These are two billionaires. But one guy is putting his money where his mouth is and making the investment into a champion. And the other guy is just nice so that you can just say you guys are cool. But it doesn't mean much to the division. It doesn't mean much to me. It can mean a lot of sense to a lot of casual fans. But guess what? Casual fans don't know what the fuck they're talking about the majority of the time. And a lot of the times, maybe not all the time, but a lot of the times, I know what the fuck I'm talking about. So for Terence Crawford, he has to do something drastic. Either is you come in and you make Ugas an offer that is way higher than what Spence is going to get, and that takes him away as an opportunity that allows you to unify in the division, and now you each got 2 belts, and maybe you gain a little bit more leverage. You got to do that, or you're going to be stuck assed out. And then, worst case scenario, you end up taking a fight, you take a surprising loss, and all of a sudden, that WBO title is hanging up in the air, and you lost all the remaining leverage that you had. So, for Manny Pacquiao, he gets to just drift off and do other shit. He can go fight Conor McGregor. He could go fight Mikey Garcia. He can go venture off and work with other different types of promoters. And for me personally, I think for Manny Pacquiao, and much like with Mikey Garcia and a lot of other guys who are guys who were on the PBC banner and they went elsewhere, they get applauded on their way out. They get applauded by PBC guys on their way out. You've never seen majority of these guys say that they left PBC to duck these fighters. They've always been applauded on their way out. They're just like, hey, thanks for the opportunity, for coming over, fighting us, and you know what? No strings attached. I've never seen a situation in which people try so hard to root for these guys to leave a specific promoter, and it's a promoter who's willing to just let them go without having to do any fuck shit. But if the roles are reversed and it's a guy with another promoter wanting out, he is then degraded and, he's, basically shitted on for wanting to go to the other side. I would love for Terence Crawford to leave Top Rank, get a PBC fight, because I think he can honestly make more money. And I think it will do better for his livelihood. I think it'll do better for his resume with all the options that he has. Look at Mikey Garcia. Granted, he got his ass whooped by Errol Spence, but Mikey Garcia's resume looks great after leaving PBC. Manny Pacquiao's resume, if it was already a Hall of Fame legendary resume, and he added a couple of really good guys that he wasn't going to get where he was with Bob Arum. So, in my opinion, it's great. It's amazing to see a lot of these guys be able to do what they want and leave one side when they feel like they've captured enough money. Manny Pacquiao made like $20 million going to PBC. Terrence Crawford, probably not gonna get $20 million, but you're probably gonna make more than the 3.5 that you're getting with Top Rank. You know, so I'm not saying that Crawford needs to just like abandon ship. Do what he needs to do to get away from Arum, but at this point, it wouldn't hurt for him to start looking at options. You know, I just feel like there's nothing for me to justify the reason that Terrence Crawford should stay where he's at and force the hands of other guys. You're not in a position to do it. You lack the financial statements behind it. And for a guy like Manny Pacquiao, he's got no strings attached. He can do whatever he wants. He's got the freedom that he wants to do. He, in my opinion, has never been forced to do anything he didn't want to do under the PBC banner. And on the Top Rank, we've seen Manny Pacquiao unhappy. We've seen Manny Pacquiao try to sue Bob Arum. We've seen Manny Pacquiao do so much shit as a way to kind of show us that, yo, I really want to get the fuck out of the situation. And Terrence Crawford is starting to see the same things. But Terrence Crawford, at the same time, is taking a lot of these fucked fights. So get ready for Spence versus for Ugas. So that's a 3-belt, title fight. I don't want to see people bitching about it. So we'll see what happens. I'd love to break down the fight, especially if they put a date on it and if both guys agree. I think there'll be some time before they try to announce it. I think they're going to probably try to announce it with like a spring-summer schedule for the sport, depending on how the vaccine program works and if they can get people into a stadium. It'll probably be a fight in Dallas in Jerry World. So we'll be looking forward to that. But those are my thoughts on it.